All right, we're about to dive into a world that's totally invisible, but it's literally all around us, and even inside us. It's a world that, believe it or not, pretty much runs our entire planet. We're talking about bacteria. So, let's pull back the curtain and take a closer look at these unseen rulers.
So when I say the word bacteria, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For most of us, it's probably something like this. Germs, pathogens, nasty little bugs. We see them as the enemy, right? Something we have to constantly scrub away and sanitize our lives against. But is that really the whole picture?
Whoa, just look at this number. It's almost impossible to even wrap your head around it. But here's the crazy part. That is the number of bacteria that could pop into existence from a single starting cell in just 24 hours. That is some serious explosive growth, and it all comes down to their incredibly efficient way of multiplying.
And then there's this little fact which just completely flips the script. While we're so busy fighting off germs, we are absolutely covered in them. Covered! And most of these guys are just coexisting with us. A lot of them are actually helpful, kind of like bouncers keeping the really bad ones out. So they're not invaders, they're more like our permanent microscopic roommates.
Okay, so if they're our roommates, we should probably get to know them a little better. What exactly are we looking at? To really get their huge impact, you got to start with the basics. So let's break down the blueprint of a bacterium.
The most important thing to know is this. Bacteria are prokaryotes. Now, that's a bit of a sciencey term, but all it really means is that they are super simple. You know how our cells have a nucleus, like a central headquarters? Well, bacteria don't have that. Their genetic code, their DNA, is just this one single chromosome kind of floating around inside. They're the true minimalists of the biological world.
And these simple little life forms come in a few standard models. You're basically looking at the four main shapes right here. You've got the little spheres called cocci, the rod-shaped ones called bacilli, the spirals, and then the little comma-shaped guys called vibrio. And this isn't just for show. Their shape often has a lot to do with how and where they live.
So let's zoom in on one. Now don't worry about memorizing all these labels. The key things to notice are the really tough cell wall on the outside. It acts like armor. The gooey stuff inside, the cytoplasm where all the action happens. And on some of them, this awesome whip-like tail called a flagellum. It's like a little outboard motor. It's a simple design, but it is a perfect little machine for survival.
And that machine is built for one thing above all else, making more of itself. The way they do it is called binary fission, and it is brutally efficient. The cell basically makes a copy of its DNA, pinches in the middle, and then just splits in two. That's it. No drama. And that's how one single bacterium can become trillions in just a day. But what happens when things get really tough? Well, some bacteria have this incredible superpower. They can form what's called a spore. Think of it like a biological panic room or a survival suit. The bacterium wraps up all its essential gear in this super tough wall, which lets it survive being boiled, totally dried out, or even poisoned. It just waits. And when things get better, it comes right back to life. Unbelievable.
So, what we have here are these ancient, tiny, and ridiculously tough life forms. And yes, some of them cause a lot of trouble, but the huge majority of them aren't just harmless, they're absolutely vital. So now, let's talk about the other side of the story. Let's meet the good guys.
You know, one of our most important relationships with them is actually in medicine. Look at this. Many of our most powerful life-saving drugs, antibiotics, are actually made by other microorganisms. Penicillin, it comes from a mold. Streptomycin, which was a miracle for treating tuberculosis, it comes from another bacterium. We are literally using bacteria's own weapons to fight off the bad ones.
And their resume in healthcare doesn't stop there, not by a long shot. We use weakened or dead bacteria to make vaccines that train our immune systems how to fight. We use them to create serums that are packed with ready-made antibodies. And with genetic engineering, we've basically turned bacteria into tiny little factories, churning out things like insulin for people with diabetes. It's amazing.
Stepping back from medicine, their impact is, well, planetary. Now, this diagram of the nitrogen cycle might look a little complicated, but the main point is actually pretty simple. The air all around us is mostly nitrogen gas, but plants can't use it like that. It's bacteria, these little specialists in the soil, that grab it and fix it into a form that plants can actually absorb. Bottom line, without these specific bacteria, there'd be no plants, no food chain, period.
And they're not just farmers, they're industrial powerhouses too. I mean, think about this. The vinegar in your kitchen, the curing process for coffee and tobacco, even tanning the leather for your shoes and making fibers for rope. All of those things rely on what different bacteria do. They're like nature's original chemists, and we've figured out how to put them to work for us.
But of course, it isn't all good news. For all the amazing things they do, we can't just ignore the fact that some bacteria are truly dangerous enemies. So yeah, it's time to talk about the bad guys.
Anyone who's ever found a forgotten container of leftovers way in the back of the fridge knows this problem all too well. Food spoilage. That's just bacteria doing what they do best, breaking stuff down. To fight back, we've come up with all sorts of tricks, like pasteurization, which uses heat to kill them, or using salt, which basically makes the food an impossible place for them to live. It's a constant battle to keep our food safe. And then, of course, there are the pathogens. These are the bacteria that make us sick, and the list of diseases they've caused throughout human history is long and devastating. Things like cholera, tuberculosis, pneumonia, tetanus, these are all caused by specific harmful bacteria invading our bodies. They are still a massive threat to people all over the world.
And in a really dark turn, that destructive power has even been looked at for use in war. Some nations have actually researched how to weaponize deadly bacteria like anthrax, essentially trying to turn a natural disease into a weapon of mass destruction.
So, where does all this leave us? On the one hand, these things are absolutely essential for life on Earth, for our food and our medicine. But on the other hand, they're behind decay, disease, and even death. So how in the world do you reconcile those two things?
You know, maybe the best way to think about them isn't as good guys or bad guys. They're just essential. They are a fundamental force of nature, just like fire or water. They create and they destroy. They're a core part of the cycle of life itself. Our job isn't to get rid of them because we can't. It's to understand them and find the right balance.
So, the next time you wash your hands, maybe you'll think about it a little differently. You're not just killing germs, you're managing this incredibly complex, microscopic ecosystem you carry around with you. And that leaves us with one last question to chew on. What would a world without any bacteria actually be like? It's a world that, for better and for worse, simply couldn't exist at all.